one time knew a family that had one of the children in the family got leukemia. And I remember I went to this family's home to visit them, and I was taken aback by how much the mother was studying leukemia. When you went into her home, she had a bookcase that was over the kitchen table, and that bookcase, or just a shelf, was lined with medical books. And every medical book was bookmarked and dog-eared and had all kinds of, and they were all technical books. But she had bought them all and was reading them all so that she could know everything about her child's cancer, her child's leukemia. And in fact, the refrigerator, of all places, had diagrams of the human body and definitions of the disease and little cheat sheets on what to expect and symptoms and all these other things. And in talking with her, it was obvious that the most pressing concern on her heart and mind was the health of her child. And her talk was just full of medical terms and things that she was studying and learning about this disease that was killing her child. And I think in talking with her, if you asked her why she had all these books and why she was going to all this time and length to study it, is she wanted to know best how to have her child treated. And she also wanted to be able to converse intelligently with the doctors and the nurses and the staff. She wanted to be on top of it. Well, I feel somewhat the same about my disease and about your disease, about all of our disease, and that is the disease of ungodliness. This cancer, this toxin that's in our veins, in our hearts, and in our minds, which is this desire to rebel, to sin, to be ungodly. And to me, it's worth studying, because I think as much as it's worth studying godliness, a good bit of our struggle with being godly is having to combat our ungodliness. I think a big part of becoming holy is finding out what is the root cause and cure of our sin in our lives. And so for that purpose, I want to talk today about sin, not a topic that is always uplifting, but it can be, I think, if you have a real heart for holiness. It's not enough for a weatherman to tell you that there's going to be precipitation. If they tell you there's a 100% chance of precipitation, I'm glad to know that. But it's best if they would tell you what kind of precipitation. Precipitation, the word means to hurl down at the earth. It comes back from when people thought that all weather came from Mount Olympus or the gods, and they were throwing weather down. So precipitation is just something being hurled, but you and I know that there's all kinds of stuff that can be hurled down, from mist to rain to freezing rain to hail to sleet to snow. And so you want to know what exactly is going to be precipitating, because it affects what you wear, it affects how you drive or whether you drive at all, it affects what you take with you. I mean, you can't shovel snow with an umbrella, right? And so you want to know if it's going to snow. Incidentally, when you're up there in northern Maine, you can ask any of them to open the trunk of their car, and there'll be a snow shovel in there. It doesn't matter what time of year, because they know it can snow any day up there, and that's the truth. But they're always prepared. You want to know what kind. Well, in the same way, it's not enough for me to say that your struggle today is with ungodliness or with sin, because ungodliness takes different forms. And the different types of ungodliness that the Bible identifies are three: transgressions, sins, and iniquities, or iniquity, sin, and transgression. And it's important to note that there's a difference between the three, because they affect the way that you pray to combat them. If you want to have victory over one, it's going to be a different course of action than for another. And it's also going to affect the way you find victory, the way that you attempt to live and combat and prevent it in the future. And so that's what I want to focus on today by taking just a quick look at the first two verses of this psalm. And this is a notion that is included in all of the Bible, but certainly David liked to employ it in his Psalms. He talked about it here and then in Psalm 51 and in others. But If you look again here at this passage, I'll show it to you, 32, 1-2, it says, how blessed is he, or how blessed is he, whose transgression is forgiven, whose sin is covered, and how blessed is the man to whom the Lord does not impute iniquity, and in whose spirit there is no deceit. Don't lose heart, incidentally, if your translation does not have those three words, transgression, sin, and iniquity. Mine does, but I can assure you that whether or not it uses sin twice or sin 3 times or different words there, those are 3 unique words that David uses in Hebrew to talk about 3 different things or 3 different forms of ungodliness that he wants to have addressed in his life. The first thing I want to look at is transgression. The blessing, there's a blessing in misery. Look at me at the first part of verse 32. It says, how blessed is he whose transgression is forgiven. Now before I move on, I just want to note for you the difference between the 3 before we look at any of them. And to give you an analogy or an example of it, I'm going to refer you back to Adam and Eve. A transgression is a rebellion. To transgress means technically to trespass. If there's a boundary line, if there's a law, if there's a command, and you step over that boundary line, that's called a transgression. That's where there's a particular command, there's a particular law, there's a particular boundary that has been set, and when you walk over that, willfully, knowingly, that is called a transgression. That's breaking a rule. So that's transgression. Then there's sin, and the exact definition of transgression, incidentally, is rebellion. The exact definition of sin, though, is missing the mark. And to sin is to come up short. It's to fail in fulfilling your purpose as a human being, which is to glorify God and to enjoy Him forever. So anything short of doing that is sin. Okay? And finally, iniquity is a word meaning that you are to blame for that. That if there's any blame for your ungodliness, it rests in you. Now take a look at Adam and Eve. And I'll give you the 3 different kinds just in their quick little story of the fall. Them actually eating the apple, or it's not an apple, them actually eating the fruit that was forbidden them to eat. That is a transgression. God told them, you shall have anything in the garden that you want, but of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil and of the tree of eternal life, you shall not eat, lest you die. So when Adam and Eve took from that tree and bit into that apple, they knew they were breaking the law. They knew it was against the rules. They did it anyway. It was a willful act of disobedience. That is a transgression.